Simon Jordan, the chairman of Crystal Palace and an outspoken man, no stranger to controversy in the game, was a man I was lucky enough to meet in a top London hotel, funny enough, in London. Right, Mike Ashley, chairman of Newcastle. Now, to be fair, Newcastle fans, they don't moan as much as maybe Tottenham fans. But my point is this, okay? This is a man who stuck £250 million of his own money into the club. And I worked it out that if the average wage, say, is £15,000 for the average working man in Newcastle, would you say that? Okay. I worked it out that would take you 16,666.6 years recurring to earn that money.
There has to be an element of respect for the fact that he poured £250 million into the club. But there has to be an element of respect for the fact that John Hall and Douglas Hall rebuilt the club from a club that was in complete freefall. But there isn't. Football fans have very short memories. They don't regard John Hall very highly up in Newcastle, even though the man rebuilt their club. I talk to Newcastle fans and they go, "Wee, John Hall, they all made a lot of money," all that sort of nonsense. Because guys that put money in football clubs are not allowed to make money. See, not allowed. Not allowed. Players can get paid and they get paid off, and managers can get paid fairly. But anyone that dares put money in a football club of their own and then dares to want it back should be taken outside and flogged. Yeah. And I don't mean financially, I mean flogged with a cat of nine tails. But Mike's problem is, I think he tried to show Paul Kemsley that he had a bigger willy than he has. Because Paul was at Spurs, Mike has had an attitude for many years at Lily White's and it's SD Sports, isn't it? Of being very low key. Floats his company, gets a ton of money, which he already had, but gets a ton more. Ta-da! I'm going to wear a Newcastle shirt and stand in the stands. Right. Why would you do that? Why would you do Why would you do that? Right. I went to the only game I stood in the stands with at Palace was one of the first games at Norwich, and it was the worst mistake I ever made. You stand with the fans. I got picked up, phoned from front to back. They were being nice to me, but you just don't sit with fans. Because at the end of the day, I can talk to a fan after a game, and everything is crap. Their lives, their football club, everything is crap, even down to the pants that they're wearing. Right? If we've lost, right? They can be wearing the same pants, living the same life. If we've won, and everything's fantastic. They're wearing the best fitting pants they've ever worn, and the club's beer is fantastic, and the hot dogs have fantastic value, and I am Lord God Almighty. So you don't mix with these guys, because if you're a leader, they want you to lead. They don't want to see you. They want to know you're there. They don't really want to see you. So Mike's situation to me is ludicrous, and he's got himself in to this football club, gone in there and gone, "Oh hello, I don't like it in here. This is expensive, and it's going to get worse." Yeah. And then someone says, "I know. Why don't you employ Kevin Keegan, because he'll really help you out." Yeah. Right? So in comes Keegan in his merry band, because he's skint and waiting tables at his wife's restaurant and desperately needs his money because his football circus has gone down the tubes. Comes on board, and you've got a horrendous problem, because Keegan will not stand up and support his chairman. So then Mike, goes and does whatever he does, and I don't know why he's got Dennis Wise in there. I like Den. I've known him for years. I think he's a lovely lad. But I wouldn't have him as director of football in my club, because I probably could write what Dennis knows about players abroad on the back of a postage stamp. Right. The other guy, Jimenez, I think is a pal of his. But I feel sorry for him in one respect, that he has spent this money. And the media are reporting this nonsense that he's going to sell the club for £480 million. Here's a rule of business, right? And you could say it applies to me as well, given the fact I've announced I want to sell. If you tell people you want to sell something desperately, they ain't going to offer you double your money. No. They're going to offer you half the money, take your trousers down and make you grateful for it. Yeah. So the reality of the press saying Mike Ashley wants £440 million and burped in Dubai when they were having a fast is just ridiculous. If he gets his money back, he'll be a lucky man. Right. And Newcastle, Newcastle fans, I hear about them, and I did it on radio the other day. I've been up at Newcastle many times. We've played them many times, and this Geordie roar that they talk about, I've never heard it. The only time I hear it is when they score. Yeah. You go to Sheffield and places like that where they get behind their team from the first whistle, no matter what. Sheffield Wednesday supporters have plenty to moan about
Yeah.
over the years, but they're there every week, in their droves, supporting their team from the first whistle to the last whistle. And Newcastle fans have got to face the facts. Newcastle is a bigger club than Crystal Palace will ever be, and I accept that. But they're not a big club. They're a big club in Newcastle.
Yeah.
They're not a big club anywhere else.
No.
And this expectation level that's put upon managers up there is just grossly unfair.